Hi, my name is Nick Harding from Together for the Harvest, and this is one of our wonderful leadership conversations. And I'm joined today by Jonny Brennan, my good friend, who leads an amazing church in Hoylake on the Wirral, Hope Church Wirral. It's great to have you with us today, Jonny.
Hey, it's great to be here, Nick. I'm so excited to chat with you, and anything about kind of leadership stuff I get excited about. And so, yeah, really excited to be here. Thank you for including me.
Pleasure. So we had an interesting time together in lockdown when you provided some video recording facilities. You turned the sanctuary of your church into an amazing video recording studio.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to do that with you. So I'm very grateful for that, Jonny.
Oh, it was ace. Yeah. The pandemic provided many challenges to many people. And I love technology. So actually getting to turn the church into what was essentially a TV studio for a number of months was quite exciting, and I'm honoured that we were able to help you guys and do some of that filming there.
Yeah, brilliant. It was people have said it's some of the best filming we've done for Kairos Connection, just because of the whole atmosphere and ambience of the place. So,
brilliant.
So Jonny, just let's get a bit of background going. You're obviously a relatively young leader, which by church leader standards, particularly from where I'm sitting today. Jenny and I have just celebrated last night our 46th wedding anniversary.
Oh, incredible!
Yeah, so been around the block, and I love connecting with younger leaders. I think they've got so much to give, so much to offer. So we're hoping to learn something from your journey. So just tell us a little bit, about maybe how you came to faith, a bit about how you met and married Bex and your family, just a bit of background stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently at this moment in time 33, and I had to think about that, which means that I feel like I'm getting old. 33, very holy age. You're
not planning on being crucified this year, are you?
It's not in my 5-year plan. Absolutely not.
Excellent.
But yeah, 33. So in terms of church leader, age, I suppose, quite young. I think the pandemic in the last 18 months, I've been leading the church for just over 2 years, which we'll get onto, I'm sure. But 18 months of it being in a pandemic has aged me. In fact, my daughter, who's 6 years old, politely told me about all the grey that is starting to come through the beard at 33. But yeah, no, I'm 33. I am Wirral, born and bred, Paradise Peninsula, the place where I'm sure Jesus is coming back first, just for the views, probably. I always say this: I've moved a grand total of 5 miles in my entire life. I've lived in 3 houses, I've grown up in church. My family took me to church when I was younger. We went to a really amazing Brethren church in Irby in the Wirral, where I spent 16 years. We then moved to an evangelical church in Oxton called Maitland, and from there, really, I connected at 16. I connected with some incredible other young people, and my best friend at the time there, we just really were on fire for Jesus. And so I grew up in that kind of environment. And then 17 years old, I had a life-changing experience. I had a car crash that really shaped the next 3 to 4 years of my life, really. I had a lot of questions. I've never ever doubted the existence of God. But for a period at 17 through to probably 19, 20, I didn't like him very much. And had lots of questions about why I went through some of the stuff I went through, why my family went through that kind of stuff. A lot of the kind of typical questions that so many of us have all the time. And I've always been involved in some form of church leadership. From 16, we were leading a youth group, and so to wrestle with those when you're a kind of leading worship as I do, and all that kind of stuff was just really some of the hardest moments of my life. And so at 17, really struggled with my faith, turned away from a lot of the conventional ways of being a Christian, never stopped going to church because I think my mum and dad would have battered me. Never stopped going to youth group because there was, to be completely honest, it's an honest leadership there was some girls that I liked, and my friends were there. And so
the magic of the youth group.
100%. Yeah. Best strategy ever. So I was living this double life for a number of years, leading worship one week and going out for 18th birthday parties the following day, and just really struggling, completely lost, and completely rudderless is the way I describe it. I didn't feel like I had any purpose going for a lot of the stuff I was involved in, a lot of the stuff that gave me identity in church and in Christian leadership. I wasn't sure if I believed any of it or wanted to be involved in any of it. And so, long story short, Sam, my best friend at the time and still a really, really close friend, invited me to MCYC, which it's a summer camp in churches in the Northwest, go to North Wales. I'd been there since I was 9 years old, and he invited me to go, and I begrudgingly went because it was a free holiday.
MCYC is one of those amazing institutions in the Northwest, isn't it?
Oh my word.
Seems to have been going forever. And if you're brought up in this area, you've definitely been to MCYC at some stage in your life.
100%. It's such a great organization. It's been facing some challenges in the last, as every other thing is. But for me, it was completely formative in my life. It was the place where I went away every year and felt like I experienced God in a way there that I never experienced at home. And there's something about that retreat. We read that in the Bible, don't we? About that retreating away and stopping what you're doing and spending time amongst other people who are Christians and can spur you on. And so, but that wasn't the reason I went. I went because it was a free holiday. And the first night we were there, and the worship band strikes up, and they start singing a song, "Strength Will Rise as We Wait Upon the Lord," a lovely early 2000s classic. And I stormed out of the room, and I was angry and frustrated and didn't believe the words because I didn't feel like I was strong anymore. I felt like everything I believed had been toppled. So I leg it up the stairs to where the tents are. I'm just looking to get away from everything. And this guy, a guy by the name of Gareth Dublin, who, if you're on the Christian scene in Liverpool or Merseyside, in some way you will have come hopefully across him, because he's an incredible guy. And I knew Gareth from being a youth leader and all that kind of stuff, so I knew him. And in a prophetic moment, he followed me up the stairs. He grabbed hold of me, turned me around. I'm 19 years old at this point, and he gives me a hug and he says, "It's not God's fault." And I hadn't had any conversation with him prior to that. I hadn't told him how I was feeling. I hadn't told him anything like that. And we chatted for a long time that night. And I made a commitment to him more than anything at that point, because I was a bit weirded out about how all this came about. And I hadn't grown up in a church where the gifts of the Spirit had been really encouraged. And so this propheticness was quite eye-opening. And so I said to him, I made a commitment to him, and I said, I'll go into the week open-minded. I'll go into the sessions not being angry at God. I'll go in asking those questions. I'll pray. I'll go through everything. I'll do whatever I have to do to get through the week, because I was now intrigued. And
reminds me of that phrase, Jonny, that one word from God and everything changes.
Yeah, 100%. There's that song, isn't there? One touch from the King changes everything. And even now I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that time. The week was being led by another church leader from Liverpool, Nick and Ange Johnson. Oh, yeah. And Nick's become my mentor, and one of my closest friends now. We get together every month without fail. Even during lockdown, we were on Zoom having dinner together. It's turned from like a mentor-mentee relationship to just some great friends talking about church leadership, and it has been, I don't think I would have got through half of what I've got through, but it all started there. I prayed with Nick in that week that I would be baptized in the Holy Spirit, and that my faith would just grow from there. And boy, looking back now, what a significant time that was. It was the catalyst for everything that has happened in my life personally, both as an individual person, as a son of Jesus, but also as a church leader. And so yeah, that's how I came about it. I was there
amazing
and changed.
Fantastic. I just want to pick you up on that one thing that you just mentioned about having a mentor, because in my own experience, that has made all the difference in the world, having someone who I look up to, someone who I learn from, someone who I can be accountable to. And just love any comments you got on that, Jonny, because I think even at my great advanced age, I still look for those people in my life, and I have them because I value personal development and growth, spiritual growth so much that I never want to stop growing and learning. But just give me your thoughts on the whole mentor idea, and maybe how important it is for church leaders to have someone like that in their lives.
100%. I honestly, you know, my relationship with Jesus wouldn't be like it is today without Nick. And I know that sounds, you know, placing a lot of pressure on people, but actually he was the guy who, when I asked him would he meet with me every month and just help me become a better follower of Jesus, he said yes. And it was down to me. We always said from the very beginning, he wasn't going to chase me. I was going to chase him. Not in a kind of, but just, so I text him every month, can we have lunch? And we go out and we talk, and we started it, and we turned it, I say formal, but it's not formal because we were such good friends. It was natural. But he did say at the start of it, if you're serious about this, I want to be able to ask you the hard questions. I want to be able to ask you how your faith is. I want to be able to ask you what you're reading. I want to ask you, I wasn't married at the time. It's like, I want to ask you how you're doing with certain things that guys deal with. Not just guys, but certainly guys deal with. I want to be able to talk to you about, you know, your relationships, and that was a scary moment for all of about 30 seconds, because when he asked me and I told him, there was nothing but love and acceptance and help on the other side of it. Often we talk about mentors and we talk about accountability, and it's almost like we've got to go through being punished, if that makes sense. And that's just not been my experience. My experience of mentorship is a friend who's a bit further on going, come on, you can do this, you can get here, and you can go your own path. Me and Nick are very, very different people. We're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're very different people. And he's never, ever tried to mold me into the Nick Johnson. I haven't got the accent for it, if you know Nick. But also he's just helped me develop my leadership skills, my relational skills, and ultimately he's taught me time and time again how much it's all about Jesus, and how much that everything that comes out of leadership is from our own relationships. So yeah, can't say enough. I you know, it's the thing I say to all, you know, when I've been a youth worker for 10 years before I was a church leader, and it was the single greatest thing that I encouraged any of our young people to, was to find someone who's that little bit ahead of you and just spend time with them.
Yeah, brilliant. And big shout out for Nick Johnson at Long Lane in Garston, or the Lane as it's known. Yeah, great friend and a fantastic leader as well. Hopefully we'll have him on one of these leadership conversations.
Amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. So just skipping forward a bit, Jonny, you're now leading Hope Church Wirral. You took over from Buddy Owen, another good friend. And it's been 2 years. You said obviously been a very strange 2 years. Let me just ask you, how have you found the transition to leading a church, and how's the church found the transition of having you as their leader?
Yeah, I think the transition has been a really great one in a lot of ways. The phrase "standing on the shoulders of giants" is really poignant here. I had a great predecessor in Buddy, who the story of Hope Church is so exciting, and it used to be called Hoylake Chapel, so I've actually been at the church for nearly 10 years now, 9 years. 2012 we moved when I got married, and we joined the church. I was able to lead worship and help push the kind of, we were trying to reach 20 to 40s. That was a real big push. 2015, I was a youth worker at this time, working for Youth for Christ in the Wirral. And in 2015, we found some funding to appoint a youth worker. And so Buddy asked me to help write a job description for it. And so I helped write this job description, and then realized it was the right thing for me to apply for the job. Ultimately got the job. So I spent the next 3 years as the youth and children's pastor here at Hope Church. In 2018, started to become the associate pastor with responsibilities for youth and children's, and I guess we were moving more towards communications and wider communications and community work. And then over the period between kind of late 2018, 2019, Buddy moved on, and the church asked me to if I would be interested in stepping up to lead the church. And so, yeah, wow, the transition's been an interesting one. It's been the right one. It's felt so natural. This church is an incredible collection of people who have helped. Obviously, there was a form of continuity there because I was very visible and vocal and part of the 2-person staff team at that time. And so, yeah, it's been great. It's been an interesting change from my mindset, from just youth and children's work to working with adults and working with a whole kind of strategic and spiritual vision, and leadership has been a real change. And then you throw into the mix nearly kind of 8 months into leading the church, a global pandemic that shut us all down in the building anyway. So yeah, it's been not without its challenges, but I've never ever felt completely out of my depth. I've definitely felt out of my depth, but never felt completely like I'm drowning. And that's, again, huge number of reasons: previous leadership, church family as it is now. It's been a real honor, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity, really, I suppose is the honest answer.
Brilliant. And I have to say, Jonny, I don't think I know a church leader who hasn't felt out of their depth at some time, especially during COVID and lockdown. But if someone's never felt out of their depth, they probably aren't taking enough risks.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough in my my profoundness.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're married to Bex. You've got some children?
Yeah, 2 kids. Yeah, so I got married to Bex in 2012. We met when we were 9 years old at the infamous, as we've already talked about, MCYC. Yeah. We had been friends all the way through youth group. We had both been in some relationships, but we were always really close. In fact, I think there's a receipt that we've got somewhere, almost 3 years before we even got together, where we went on what you would now describe as a date. But at the time we didn't describe it as that, and it really wasn't. But yeah, we started to spend more time together, realized that we actually had some feelings for each other, took the plunge in 2010 together, and started dating, got engaged in 2011, and then married in 2012. And it's been an incredible journey. We have 2 kids. Martha, who is 6 years old and is just she's beautiful, she's hilarious, she's energetic. And now we have Dan, or Dan, as everyone calls him. Dan is 2, and he is a handful. He's brilliant. I love him to bits, but yeah, he's at that terrible 2's age with an older sister. And we're just navigating young children, and we both work. Bex is a nursery nurse, and is part of the management team at her nursery, so she's kind of got it full on there. She worked the entire way through the pandemic, didn't take any furlough, and so yeah, we're just navigating all of that kind of stuff at the moment, which is fun.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, there's nothing quite so sanctifying as marriage and having children, is there?
Oh yeah, I mean, everyone says, it's the honor of my life, and I remember some of the best leadership advice I've always had is, you're a leader at home first before you're a leader anywhere else, and that's been a challenge to me, if I'm completely honest, and it's been times when it's been really difficult, and there's times when to be blunt, it's felt like being a dad at home has got in the way of leading a church. Yeah. And that is a huge pressure, and we don't talk about that enough as church leaders, I don't think, and certainly the saying it is one thing. I would suggest we all know that that's a really key thing. Living that takes a lot of work, and I'm nowhere near there yet, but I am constantly trying.
And you've obviously set your trajectory for that, which is fantastic, Jonny. I totally respect that. Couldn't agree with you more. And you've talked about navigating, and you're obviously navigating through COVID and lockdown. What are you hoping for as you come out of lockdown?
Yeah, wow. I was talking about this with our team earlier on today, you know, we had that moment at the start of the pandemic in March 2020. I don't know if you remember. There was just this togetherness, wasn't there? There was, we were all kind of, we were all in it, and everyone was, you know, I got to know some of my neighbours better in that time when we couldn't actually see our neighbours than I had done the entire time we'd lived there, the 5 years previous. And so there was togetherness. I know from our church point of view that we were just able to really support people in a way that we'd never been able to support people in just some simple ways. And as it's progressed and as it's gone on, you see the society, society fracturing a little bit, let's call it that, and different opinions and different priorities and different, everyone is dealing with this in some way. And so my real prayer and the stuff that we've talked about in our leadership team here at church is that we have to do things differently. We have to, my heart and my desire is so much for togetherness, unity, and we're navigating what that looks like when we don't always agree with each other, and how we can do that in a loving way. And it's such simple truths, and it's such simple things, but are actually the hardest to really get right. And I know that, you know, personally in some of my friendships and relationships, this last 18 months has put real strain on things, and some relationships that would have fallen by the wayside, they haven't, because we've been dedicated to each other, dedicated to sorting through. We still disagree on certain things, but we're dedicated to each other, and that has meant we've been able to talk and we've been able to work stuff out. We still disagree, but we still love each other. And I think Rick Warren says that that quote, the two lies that we've told ourselves is that if we disagree with someone, we hate them. And I can't remember the other one, which is really frustrating, but it's good. If you go and Google it, Rick Warren, things that we disagree on. It's just, honestly, I think the response we've had from our community, I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. We were involved in the height of the pandemic with supporting 120 asylum seekers who were in a hotel 100 yards away from the church. And the unity that we saw from gathering people and churches around a common goal was like nothing I've ever seen this side of heaven. And I don't think I will. And I'm just desperate for more of that. I'm desperate for the church to come together, to love one another, to really impact things in our community here.
Can I just interrupt you there for a moment, Jonny? Because I think what you're raising is for me, a really important point. And I think it's at the heart of really what Together for the Harvest is all about, which is, you know, reaching every man, woman and child with the good news of Jesus, and seeing our places, our towns, our cities, you know, transformed by the gospel. But what you said there is that the unity that came from being on a shared sense of mission together is like nothing else. And you know, if you've ever been on a short-term mission, you'll know that just what powerful team identities are formed on short-term missions. And just love your reflections on that, because obviously, you know, Together for the Harvest is trying to encourage churches to put mission right at the front and center of church life. But actually, the spin-off of doing that is massive in terms of pulling the church together around a common focus, a common and shared goals. And so that was a great example you gave there. Any other thoughts along those lines?
I think my whole time in ministry, whether I was a youth worker for Youth for Christ, one of my main roles at Youth for Christ was to deliver schools work in school. And I worked out really quickly that that one guy or a team going into a school to deliver RE lessons was having a really great impact. But what actually really changed things was when we introduced a local church into that equation. And the life change that we saw through that was, again, incredible. And from there, later on in my Youth for Christ time, we piloted a project which was called Fusion, which was when a number of churches who were really struggling financially, they couldn't afford a youth worker, but they were desperate to see God move in and through young people. and they didn't know what to do, so they approached us, and long story short, we got 3 churches, all different denominations, to put some money into a pot, and we worked alongside them to hire a youth worker to work in the area, and the effects of that are still ringing through today now, and that was over 6 years ago now, and so I've seen firsthand, and I know in my life personally what comes when people are together. And we've got to be careful that together doesn't get lost in translation. Like I said with that Rick Warren stuff, the translation of together doesn't necessarily mean that we're all agreed on every single thing. But I was at a leadership conference years ago, and Mickey Gumbel was there. And he said there's so much more that unifies us than that divides us. But we spend as time, Christians, talking about the stuff that divides us more. And so, we've got a Methodist church, we've got an Anglican church, we've got a free evangelical church here. We're a non-denominational church. We've got all of these flavors of churches that are all designed to work together to point people to Jesus. But what that looks like is so different in context. And I guess what we're trying to do here, we saw some fruit. And I think that was the key thing. Because we were working together, we saw the fruit. We saw what happened when the community rallied around some men. We saw some tangible stuff happening. And I think so often we never get to that point with churches for the gospel, because we're worried about what the fruit's going to look like, or whether we'll see the fruit, or whether we'll see. And actually, for me, we've talked about it in our kind of, we're trying to get the clergy all together quite regularly here in Hoylake, which is weird to even describe myself as clergy. It doesn't make sense to me. But we're trying to get us all together to get to know each other, to build friendships, and to hopefully see that fruit. But we don't know what that fruit looks like. I'm a visionary, so I have it in my mind. I can see it, but I've got no idea how God is going to work. And for me, it's not about, like, I love strategy and I love projects and I love all that kind of stuff. But for me, I just want to pray to God, where are you blessing? And how can I get involved in that? And how can I bring some friends in? And God, what are you doing in this area? And how can we get involved? And so often I think we miss that moment.
Fantastic. Yeah. And, I love the fact that you're doing that there in Hoylake. Obviously, Together for the Harvest is trying to foster relationships all across the 6 boroughs of the Liverpool City region, sort of unity for the sake of mission. What would you say, Jonny, to the vicar or the pastor who's just thinking, you know what, I'm just too busy. I just don't have time to work with any other leaders or reach out to other churches. I just need to get on with what I'm doing here. What would you say to them?
I think, one of the biggest problems is that there is so much expectation on leaders in churches right now. And I speak to leaders regularly, both through the TFH network and through my own networks. And I would say that like a good 80-90% of us are just exhausted of this last 18 months, of the pressures and we run the risk of really burning out, especially in our own private, personal prayer life and relationship with Jesus. I have felt that acutely over this time, the risk of losing our identity as a follower of Jesus, before as a church leader, before as the tech guy who suddenly mastered Zoom and figured out a way to bring people together, which is so good. But actually, before all of that, we are followers of Jesus. And I would say that pre-pandemic, in the Wirral, we have TFH breakfasts, and we talked about transition, didn't we, before, when I was transitioning into the role as the lead pastor here. And again, I talked about that mentor relationship with Nick, the TFH breakfasts, and but more so the connection that came from that. I met church leaders from Wallasey, which is 8 miles away, from Easton, which is 12 miles away, from West Kirby, which is a mile away, and just to see that there's such a strategicness about it, which is amazing. But also within that, just to ask how things are going, and every month without fail, every single leader who I spoke to would ask how I was doing. A lot of them knew I was new into church leadership in the lead pastor role, and so would take an interest the amounts of coffees, because I'm a coffee snob. I mean, I don't know if you can be involved in church leadership without really, I don't know, but I think I went for numerous coffees with church leaders who really took me under their wing and helped me, told me some of the pitfalls I was likely to see as a church leader. And so just that sense of togetherness, and I know I keep coming back to it, but I think it is really, it's really important, that the togetherness. And it can get washy, and it can get like kind of like, oh yeah, we're together, but actually no, this is doing life together, and making it a priority is for me been the single greatest thing, making my time with Jesus and my time with other pastors. And I think there's actually, I mean, I meet with pastors who I don't necessarily agree with 100% theologically on, and that has been so edifying, to just really talk and really get to grips with some stuff, and to challenge my thinking and to challenge my relationship with certain things. And so yeah, I would say we are all insanely busy, but it will never come out of my diary now. It will never, like those times to meet with other Christian leaders is going to be in my diary for as long as it can be.
Fantastic. I love that, Jonny. You're clearly kind of you're seeing those relationships as one of the big rocks that goes in the jar before everything else gets put in, because it's true, isn't it? I mean, church life is totally all consuming if we let it. Yeah. But if we prioritize other things first and build around it, then we can make it work, even for a busy leader.
And it's a longevity thing for me. I want to be in church leadership for as long as the Lord wants me to be. And I'm not planning to not do this anytime soon, but I know I've got a certain type of personality, and I think that's another key thing, learning who you are. I'm reading a book at the minute about leading from who you are. And I have aspired to be like leaders my entire life. But as I'm getting to this point now and leading a team and leading a church, I'm realizing that I'm not, the Lord has built me in a different way to those guys. And we need people like those guys, but we also need people like me. And so I'm the point of that, I guess, is that a longevity thing for me. I know for me, I need people around me. And so to prioritize that has become such a important thing, but such a sense of, it's not just a nice coffee with a pastor. This is equipping me for years and years of ministry, I hope, to help people find Jesus. And I've started to be able to invest in some younger leaders as well. So some of those guys who it feels so old, but they were in my youth group when I was a youth leader, and now they're kind of 20-somethings on fire for Jesus and looking to explore what God's got for them in their life. And it's just been, I'm a people person, so it comes fairly natural, but the busyness is the kicker.
It may be natural, Jonny, but you've clearly been intentional about investing in other people. You know, we talk a lot, don't we, about disciples who make disciples, leaders who raise leaders, and all this is so important. But you've also mentioned there's something I just want to pick up on, which is the exhaustion and the longevity. You know, I know, I'm sure you do, church leaders that are burnt out and are no longer leading churches, and some of them have even just walked away from church.
Yeah.
But I said to you when we came on this call that you're looking pretty smart and pretty trim and pretty healthy. And I, for those of you who have known you in the past, they might think, what is it about Jonny that looks different today? So tell us what's been happening in the last 8 weeks, Jonny, because it's really important.
I mean, yeah, I used to be, I'm pretty sure I can send you photos that you can pop up at some point. I used to be 22 stone. I've always had a very unhealthy relationship with food for as long as I can remember, in terms of escapism. So food for me is, I love food, and I actually love the community it provides. And so going out for meals, all that kind of stuff. But there's a time when, for as long as I can remember, I used to get bullied quite a lot in school, and so I think it was all mixed up with that. I'm kind of working through that at the minute with my counsellor, but in the last 8 weeks, 2015, my daughter was born. I decided that I wanted to be around for as long as possible to be in her life, and some of the choices I was making in 2015 were going to shorten my life. And family history of diabetes, and I wasn't doing myself any favors. So again, with the help of a buddy, actually, we were talking about before, I said, buddy, you're in charge of my diet for the next 3 months. I want you to teach me everything. Because we were doing the Daniel plan at church at the time. And I said, I want you to tell me what to do and teach me why I need to eat it. And there was a moment where I think one of my meals was a salmon fillet with a chunky avocado salad. And I remember sitting there and I was making it with Bex, and I was like, I am going to be absolutely starving after this, because there's no potato, there's no chips, there's no bread, there's no carbs. And I remember eating it, and it tasted amazing. It was really good, and I didn't feel full. And there was a light bulb moment. I started to run at that point as well. I ran a mile and signed up. As soon as I finished that mile, it was the first time I'd ever run more than a few paces. I ran a mile, and as soon as I came back from that, I signed up for a half marathon 9 months later. And so 9 months later, I ran the half marathon, 2 hours, 11 minutes, which was incredible. Something, again, this is not like, I'm not one of these guys. I don't do well with willpower. And I'm not one of these guys who sees a goal and just can do it and do it and do it. I struggle a lot. But I was raising money for an incredible charity of a friend who had died from leukemia. And so that was a real thing. And the benefits of, I lost a load of weight. So great, I lost a load of weight. I was doing really well. And then again, the problems came in life or whatever happens, and the escapism starts again. And so the pandemic was really good in a lot of ways. It got to March 2020. And between March 2020 and the end of April, I lost nearly half a stone, but I was eating whatever I wanted. And now what I realize is I was running like the rest of the population on such adrenaline that my body was burning calories faster than I could put it in, because everyone was in this whole, what are we doing? What's going on? I don't understand this. And then because I didn't change the eating habits, I then started to pile the weight on again. And it got to January this year, and I just needed to make a change. And I resisted it, and I resisted it. I started playing football again when we were allowed to play in the lockdown. And 8 weeks ago, I signed up with a personal trainer. And again, with the aim of not creating knowledge for myself. And yeah, the result is I changed my diet. I changed the way I think about food. I'm drinking lots of this, and it's just been, I feel so much better. But again, it's all part of physical, mental, and spiritual health. Like, you can't separate one from the other. I genuinely don't believe that.
And these are such big issues for us, aren't they, at the moment, as we come out of lockdown, out of COVID? So many people struggling with mental health issues, with exhaustion, with disconnection, that we've got to figure out how to put all those elements together in terms of our personal recovery, the recovery of our churches and our communities. So that's really exciting.
And one of the things, again, a year ago, just to jump in there, a year ago, I started seeing a counsellor, and I see a counsellor every 2 weeks. And I really believe nothing happened in my life that quote unquote meant that I needed counselling. But just having someone to talk to about, I'm finding out that there's a lot in my past and a lot in my mind and a lot of my personality that actually needs to work through some stuff. He's a Christian. He prays with me at the end of every session. He's an incredible guy. And the church have been amazing in supporting me through that. But like I said, that's the link, isn't it? It's not just the mental health, starting to sort my mental health out, and has lent that my spiritual health has improved, and that has given me the opportunity to improve my physical health. Everything works together. And I think it's massive for everyone who's watching this, church leader or not church leader, to really make that a priority. Make it.
Totally, John. I'm so glad you brought the counsellor thing back again, because I thought of that when you first mentioned it, that actually, for older leaders in particular, sometimes the need for a counselor can feel like a weakness, and I shouldn't be weak as a leader. I should be able to figure this out. I've got God in my life. Why do I need a counselor or therapy or whatever you want to call it? And I know for myself, 10 years ago, I desperately needed the help of a counselor, and I got the help I needed. And it was totally life-changing for me, and has changed so many things since then. And I just want to sort of echo and give a big amen. I've often say everybody needs a counselor. Especially if you're in church leadership, because you're dealing with so many things, and to have somewhere safe you can talk about it, someone who can actually bring that objective view into your life with the skills and insights they have as a counselor, as a therapist, is absolutely brilliant, and God works through them, just as God works through physical medicine. He works through the counselors and the therapists. It's brilliant.
If you were to write down my personality list, I would be the worst candidate for a pastor of a church. I don't do conflict well. I really struggle what people think of me. I've got a really active faith, but I question a lot of things a lot of the time. I'm never really satisfied, and I'm constantly questioning things. And I really, and I go back to the second one, I really don't do well when I feel like people don't like me, or if I feel like I've let someone down, put it that way. And so you put that into a church leadership context, and like 50% of my church probably don't agree with half of the stuff we're doing some of the time. It's an atmosphere, and it's a place that is rife for mental health issues.
It's a lethal cocktail, isn't it? It's a lethal
massively
cocktail.
And I was scared, and I know you mentioned older leaders. As a 33-year-old guy, when I approached my senior leadership team to ask if they would support me through the counselling financially, I was scared that they were going to stop me doing the job because they thought I wasn't up to it because I was having issues. That wasn't even like a passing thought. That probably stopped me for a month before I got to the point where I trusted them. I would say it has been up there. You're such a great interviewer, Nick. You found the 3 or 4 things that have impacted me the most in my life, and we're talking about them. But it is up there. Counselling has given me a space outside of everyone who, my wife suffers with anxiety, and for a period of time had acute anxiety, which meant she couldn't work. And she went to see Neil, this counsellor who I see as well. And just it's just, I can't, I'm so, we never, the problem is we're a year into it and we're only just delving into it, we're scratching the surface, because there's so much there.
Brilliant. Final question, because we need to land this interview.
Yes.
We could talk forever, I'm sure, but you've been very honest and very vulnerable, John. I'm really grateful for that, because if we can't be honest, how can we help other people? And we really want these interviews to be a source of life and blessing to people and encouragement. And so you revealed a lot about yourself, and I love all that I know about you, Jonny. I love that your creativity. I love your passion. I love all your techie skills and all the things that you've described. Final question is, in the context of local church and leading local church, what are you most passionate about?
Wow. You mentioned the kind of creativity, and I love being, I'm a graphic designer as well. I self-taught graphic designer because there was a need at the time. And so I love engaging with people creatively, whether that be through the live streams that we do here at church. We were able to jump on that really quickly and do that really well. And actually, when we talk about the pandemic, I think it highlights what I'm most passionate about. When the pandemic started, we were in an amazingly privileged and blessed position to be able to pre-record some really good quality church services, the worship, the preaching. The reason we wanted to do that was because in that moment, we knew that people, ourselves included, were on a trajectory where we didn't know what was going to happen. It felt like there was just no level ground anywhere. Every step you took, you didn't know what you were going to be hitting next. And two of my big things were, I want to be able to create a church service that grounds people. So it was in the church, you could see the church, we were able to, with the restrictions, do that. It gave people a sense of normality. The worship was how we normally do it. The preaching was as we normally do it. And then from then on, we started to ask the question, how do we create community when we can't create community and we can't gather as community? And I think those 2 examples there really highlight my passion as a church leader. I want to see people grow into their faith to be all that God has created them to be. We talk about gifts and talents and passions, and I think my personal belief is your purpose is linked to your gifts and your passions. If you can get your gifts and your passions to align, then the effect of what God can do through you is just profound. And so that's really what I'm passionate about, seeing people come to know Jesus. this is probably another one for another podcast, Nick, but we're about to start a school here in the church.
Oh, wow.
An alternate provision school. We teamed up with Transforming Lives for Good charity from Bradford, and we're starting a school because we want to serve our community, but help them find Jesus. Because we know that when you have that one touch from the King that changes everything, your life will never be the same again. And this has been a really helpful reminder to me again, you know, why we do what we do. To start with why, the Simon Sinek stuff is amazing, but the reason is I want to see people be all that God has created them to be, to live a life in all its fullness, and that is with Jesus and their passions and their skills all converging into one, and seeing the world change.
Amazing.
It's just a small little thing, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I love the way you just threw that. Oh, we're just starting a school, by the way. Throwing it in right at the end there. As you say,
the building work's happening at the minute, so it's all a bit, my backdrop isn't as it normally is because there's a door going just there. But
well, perhaps we'll have to come back and have a second bite of the cherry sometime. I'd love it, Jonny, if you just like to, would you mind praying for the folks who are listening to this, just a blessing over them? Yeah,
absolutely. Lord Jesus, people watching this at various times, at various stages of this pandemic, but various stages of their ministry and their life, God, I want to pray, not that you would bless them, because we know that you already have blessed us, but God, that they would be knowledgeable about your blessing. They would be aware of your presence in their life. God, I pray for the person who's burnt out right now, who's listening to this and struggling and at the end of their tether, and they don't know how to get back from that place. And God, maybe as we've been talking about the community and the people and the different things that we can do as church leaders, God, Holy Spirit, would you prompt them to make that text, to make that phone call, to tell someone they're struggling. And God, as we lead our churches, as we lead our non-profits, as we lead our people, God, help us, as I've just been reminded profoundly by Nick, why we do what we do, why we do this, why we give our lives and give our time and our talents and our passions to see people follow you. Our vision here at Hope Church is to see everyone find hope in Jesus. God, I pray for the person listening to this right now, that they would have a renewed sense of hope in you, that with you, things can change. We might be facing a brick wall, thinking, how is this going to move? But God, we know with you, all things are possible. Help us to follow you. Help us to be close to you. In your amazing name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Jonny. Jonny, you've been amazing today. You've really shared your heart. You've been very vulnerable, and we're really grateful for that, because that's how we learn. Thank you so much, and bless you for giving us your time today.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I've really appreciated it.
Okay. God bless. Bye-bye.